in Adam was the potential for all of these micro adaptations.
Yes.
And we're all the descendants of Adam and Eve. And as you like to say, that makes us all kind of
Cousins.
distant cousins. Critical race theory and what it tells us about race, it's telling us that race is kind of what we call a social construct.
To which I agree.
So maybe give us like a little thumbnail of what critical race theory tells us about race as a social construct. What does that term mean?
That as a social construct, it was created by white people to be able to maintain social hierarchies or class hierarchies based on skin color. So the darker the skin, the worse off you were considered, or, the lighter, the better in skin color.
And so we would find an agreement there with them that's just like this.
That's made up.
It's just a cultural fiction that we all sort of participate in on some level of making these distinctions between skin color, when really all we're talking about is
micro adaptations.
Yeah, physical, micro, small changes.
Yeah. Now, we don't agree with, that the whiter the skin, the better, but we do agree that race was a social construct. It was created as such.
So I think that I sent Bob a little map here that's sort of helpful. So I have it in the red circle there, roughly where the Garden of Eden was, according to scripture. And we see if we look at Africa, the darker skin near the equator, lighter skin is up more in the north. And so if humans started out there somewhere in Northeast Africa, Mesopotamia, and we did a whole show with our friend Fuzrana about like all the science behind this. This is just the quick and dirty kind of diagram here. But over time, through micro adaptations, there was these changes to optimize people's body temperature for the purpose of survival.
Yeah.
And that is pretty well established and really helpful to understand, but also gives us insight into like, let's not attach more meaning to skin color than we ought. This is just a physical trait.
Yes, because if I'm remembering that show correctly, many people would say that you and I are very different, potentially biologically, because there's such vast distinction in our skin color. Well, we actually are more alike than a set of blacks, I believe, in like Aboriginal Australia versus a Black American. There's more biological or distinctions within our DNA.
Yeah.
Within those two Black groups, you and I are actually more biologically similar, even though our skin colors don't show it.
And there was a thought 100 years ago that Black people and white people were actually different species.
Yes.
And that was a whole show we did with our friend Joe Miller on scientific racism. And it was just kind of this pseudo-scientific way of trying to think about race. But I think what's important from a biblical point of view is that in Adam was the potential for all of these micro adaptations.
Yes.
And we're all the descendants of Adam and Eve. And as you like to say, that makes us all kind of
cousins.
Distant cousins, And so in our creation identity, there is that aspect to it. Now, when we reflect on skin color, it's also interesting to think about the fact that the Bible doesn't lead with that. Like, that's not how it describes people as an essential trait. It really focused more on regional origin, which we'll get to in a minute. But I think that our culture has trained us, the identity theft that our culture trains us to engage in that's almost the first thing I see about you.
Yes.
Is that you're Black. And then the first thing you see about me is that I'm white. And then a whole bunch of assumptions lie underneath that.
I would agree.
Yeah. And I think that goes far beyond what the Bible is laying out as a biblical worldview about race.
Every voice